Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and we are here today to talk The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live, episode number 2, titled Gone. So I'm really excited to talk about this one, joined again by Hayden and Nick. Nick, give me your impressions of the second episode, just real high level, kind of what'd you think?
Yeah, so definitely not as good as the first episode. The first episode was a perfect 10. There were some problems with this one, but overall, I thought this was a very well done episode.
Mhm.
Well made, well produced. We'll get to spoilers later, but there was a lot of stuff I liked writing wise, detail wise. But I really like this episode a lot, and I love how this episode is titled "Gone." Like earlier, it's Days Gone By. That was like the first thing you think of with The Walking Dead, and now they're starting with years. This one's Gone, focusing on how gone things felt, and Bye is the next titled episode, which I think is brilliant. But yeah, overall, I liked it.
Good. Hey, how about you? What'd you think?
I thought it was a really solid episode. Great episode of The Walking Dead. I wasn't as high on it as I was on the premiere, but I think that's not a fair comparison, right? Because part of that's down to hype, and I think just we wanted to see Rick Grimes' particular story, and that was hyped up so much more for longer, right? Because he left the show before Denai Guerrera did. But, I mean, seeing Michonne, I feel like she brought the acting chops in a big way. I thought the pacing of this episode was really good, and it honestly moved things a lot further along than I thought the second episode of this series would.
Yeah, same.
And I think we got some really cool set pieces and action stuff that you can tell AMC's kind of putting their money where their mouth is, and they're investing in, like, there's some special effects sequences that happen in this episode we'll get to later that I have never, the kind of things they're showing they're not uncharted territory for this franchise, but they've never looked this good.
Yeah, this is the best I think they've put. You could tell they've invested so much on the CGI, especially with the fire aspect, which, let's be real, they pretty much had to invest a lot because this was going to be a movie trilogy, and now it's on the TV series. But yeah, they're going all in on this.
Absolutely.
This was their last chance to extend it, because I said this in the last episode. I didn't like the other series. So far, this has been much more enjoyable than what they've been putting out lately.
For sure. Tyler, where are you at with episode 2?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I agree with both of you. I think the first episode was better. I also think part of that is just the newness of seeing these characters back on screen again in the first episode, especially Rick. Hits that soft spot, right? And so you like it a little bit more. That said, it was also a really well told story in the first episode.
Absolutely.
And I find Michonne's like story and path told in episode 2 to not be quite as compelling, but still good, right? It's just very different, and it's good in a different way.
For sure.
But I like it nonetheless. I think it's well done. It is well shot. The effects, like you said, are spot on and really high level for a television show. So
yeah.
I also like, I guess I'll hold off on that. We'll get to that in a little bit. But let's talk Michonne's backstory. And so we get the first 2/3 of the episode is basically bringing her to the point where episode 1 ends, where they're reunited.
Yep.
And we see Michonne on the road. She comes into like a camp where they leave people behind to die when they're lost or whatever. So that becomes a kind of that dispute point, right? When you go through the episode, and some of the other characters, some of the other people there are kind of inspired by Michonne to leave that group and follow her on her journey. And then we get like a gas bombing, nerve bomb, something like that.
Yeah, the one we basically saw in the trailer. Yeah, which was a well-shot scene. I when I saw that in the trailer, I was like, it looked a little cheesy, but when this was fully shot, this was one of the best shot like gas scenes, like using I'm trying to find the wordage here, biological warfare in a TV series, and this was the best I've seen.
And I think it just hits really hard in context too, because in the trailer you see it as a set piece, but like in the context of the episode, by the time we get there, it's happening to people that you've grown to care about, right? So,
Yep.
What did you guys think of the concept of like a nomadic roaming group? Because I thought that was so interesting, especially in the way that like you didn't know that when you started. You just kind of cold opened on Michonne being interviewed, and then you, after their conversation's over, she leaves the trailer and you see it's on like a moving wagon. It's part of like a, honestly, almost like Manifest Destiny caravan.
Right. Little Oregon Trail type thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it because of the explanation that was given with the walker migrations.
Mm-hmm.
So having to stay on the move to stay away from those migrations. And we saw that group, which again was shown in the trailer as well, right? But
yeah,
that scene where you see this giant horde of walkers that brings you back to like, what season was that? Like 8 or something like that, that has that enormous horde.
I think it was season 9 with was it season 9 with Elvis Crew?
Yeah, the biggest horde I can think of is like season 10 towards the end of the Whisperer War.
Yeah,
Rick was still there though, because it was that horde that was like down in that like quarry or whatever.
That was the Alexandria horde where like they were going around Alexandria, and that was the one Deanna got killed. I think that was in
season 6 leading up to the No Way Out.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
There you go. But it kind of reminded me of that. But anyway, like, what'd y'all think of her story? Because then they like hang out in the mall for a while they get better.
Yeah.
And
which I loved. I loved that so much. It was a great. We'll get to that later in the spoilers.
Yeah.
But I loved that a lot. It builds great character development between her and the new character. My favorite character so far, Nat.
MVP.
Really? Okay.
Rest in peace.
That was that was the best character. I think
we should
for better than. He's legit the best new character we've had in a while that I like.
Agreed.
We should say right now, spoilers ahead. So we'll just take those chains off. Spoilers going forward, so we don't accidentally say anything.
Where's the siren?
Yep. But yeah, Nat's introducing Nat along with a couple of other characters, but Nat plays a much larger role, and Nat's almost like the Okafor type character of this episode, right? For Michonne.
Mm-hmm.
And including the end that he meets at the end, right? He basically dies during the same interaction.
Yeah, and it came out of nowhere. This came out of nowhere because when Michonne and Rick finally reunite together, and they're hugging each other, and like Nat saying, "Is that him?" And all of a sudden, boom, gets shot by a wounded CRM soldier, and that came out of nowhere.
For real.
And I was like, oh, that. It legit broke my heart because Nat was so well acted, so well written.
Absolutely.
With the other two characters they focused on, didn't do really a good job with. I think their name were. It
was Aiden and Bailey.
Aiden and Bailey didn't do a good job with them. It just didn't stick. But Nat was the one that really stuck. They did a good job with, and when he went, I was like, oh, that broke my heart. That really did.
Yeah, if we're going to kind of rewind and think about like the chronological order of events with this group, right? I think it was really interesting to see their resistance, because we've had resistances in groups before in The Walking Dead, right? Where we've had groups of people that have ideologically differed amongst each other, but that's always been kind of a violent confrontation. So it was interesting to see that like there were members of that nomadic tribe who just left, and there wasn't really seemingly any bloodshed or anything about it. It was just kind of like it was a mutual breakup, right? So,
which is rare in this universe. Like,
it is.
When's the last time we've ever seen a mutual with a big group? This is not just like a small.
Well,
I think the last time
that group is though.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
How big do you think that nomad group is, though? Did we get a sense of scale for them?
I don't think we did, but in the group we saw, it's definitely a lot bigger than because I think the last time someone left peacefully from a group was probably Morgan in season 9, if I remember correctly. I can't remember who else. Maybe Michonne, if you want to throw her in there when she goes after Rick, but.
Mm-hmm.
That was just an immediate stamp of approval that she's coming back. And at that time, Morgan, we knew was leaving, and we didn't know if he was coming back. And Of course, spoilers for Fear, he's going
Right.
to, try to go find Rick.
Yeah, which there are more hints in this episode
Yes,
that it seems like that is
I
probably
think
going to happen.
I think the one thing I
true.
wanted, which was Morgan Jones to be involved in this, I think that's going to happen. Whether
Yeah,
it's
we're
in
seeing the
season 1
seeds.
or season 2, I
Yeah.
think Morgan's going to be
Mhm.
involved with this, and I will be so much happier because maybe people disagree with me on this. I hated how he was used on Fear, and he's going to get
Mhm.
such a much better ending in this than he did in Fear.
So Tyler, run
I-
us through the moment to moment of this episode of Michonne's backstory and the moments that worked for you.
Yeah,
And
and
what you
real
thought
quick, just
overall.
quick prediction for me. I think this season ends with Morgan showing
Yep.
up.
Ooh,
I
that
think
that was
that's-
super cool.
That might
Yeah.
be the final shot we get. But so the ones that stood out to me are just kind of the experience that she had just with these the people that came with in this group,
Mhm.
and Nat in particular, while healing and getting better, and then facing the reality that Rick's probably gone, but she's going to keep going anyway. And Nat had actually kind of talked her into, or almost talked her into,
Yeah.
turning back.
Yeah,
And
and when Aiden and what's the other guy's name? Aiden and Bailey, when
Mhm.
they
Yeah.
died, which that was a well shot scene too, with how they
Sure.
affect the smoke and the aftermath. Like, we don't get they're magically main character syndrome healed. This is like they are
There's
affected. They
some
need
there's some
oxygen.
real consequences
This
here.
takes time, which I think this took weeks or months for them to heal. Which
It's about a year
Mhm.
if you
Uh,
look at
maybe,
the
yeah,
it's like
window
a-
with the
it-
seasons.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
so
it's
windows,
right around a
the window
year.
told the seasons. Yep.
yes, but oh god, what we were talking about? Yeah, with the gone thing, Nat began saying, go back to your children, go back or this, and then once he loses a piece of Bailey and Aiden, he feels like he wants to, I guess, conquer what they wanted, because
Yeah.
those two wanted to help Michonne, and
Right.
since
Mhm.
they're gone, he wants to live up to their agreement that we're
Yeah.
going to do this together with Michonne, which I thought was awesome. Character development, character growth. And the crazy part is one episode with this guy, and he shows so much growth.
I
The
know.
writers,
Yeah.
the writers really did their job well
Yeah.
with him.
There's a good
And I
layers to that
I give-
journey.
I give kudos to the writers of the show. And that, if you were to tell me I would say that about the writing on The Walking Dead 5 years ago, I would have called you crazy.
Right? Yeah, we're getting some good stuff. And I
Well-
think with the whole... Oh, sorry, Tyler, you go ahead. I lost that thought.
No, you're all good. So just to kind of continue on those points, right? I think
Mhm.
the journey for Michonne doesn't end when she finds Rick. I think it just changes,
Changes.
right?
Agreed.
And it's actually a really powerful moment for Michonne, and I would say in terms of character development, much more for her than for Rick when they find each other.
Mhm.
Because Rick is finding Michonne as he knew Michonne. Michonne isn't necessarily finding the Rick that she knew.
Yes.
I think it's a
He's
different
totally been changed.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that scene was so well acted and so well played,
Yep.
right? And just to rewind for a second, like, we were talking about how she had almost made the decision to abandon the journey to find Rick. She did. She was walking backwards. When she met Rick, Nat talks about that they're getting closer to Virginia, so the Rays would pick up again. So
Yep.
Michonne and Rick both had accepted that they were probably never going to see each other again, and that's when they reconnect, which is such an interesting,
Mhm.
I think, way
I
to
love
do that story.
I love the way they did it though too. And going back to the first episode, one of my major nitpicks was when Okafor died. Like, it didn't make any sense because it looked like an RPG. Nat,
Right.
who had, I guess, built this weapon to look like an RPG. I love how when he shot it at this helicopter, because they thought this
Yeah.
was the same helicopter that
Right.
dropped the gas on the Friends. He said that one was defective. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
That one line there is like, that makes the Okafor death make more sense.
Mhm.
It does. It's
It makes this more sense. And the best part, when that helicopter crashes, I thought Michonne knew that Rick was a part of that CRM group and was removing the helmets. And you saw this in the first episode. She did this just to see their faces to go slow with their deaths, because they were killing the
It
good
was-
people. Which
right.
I didn't think of that. I gotta be honest, that took me out of, like, wow, I thought she
Yeah.
knew this. She knew that. Now things start to make sense as to why she started removing the helmets off, because she wanted to see these people's faces and go
She's
slow.
savoring the kill, which
Yes,
is
which is
very
something
brutal, very
from
like season 3, season 4 Michonne, right? And I think that's what we're seeing, is that like without these two characters being with each other, they're regressing. And I think it's when you finally get the moment with the reunion, which is like so beautiful, so well acted, really pulls at the heartstrings with the music and that long kiss and that long embrace. But I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like I read like there was some distance between them in this moment. And it was really subtle, but I kind of felt like there was a hesitation, especially from Rick, where he was like telling Michonne, like, I'm not with them. And Michonne later in the episode kind of hesitates how much she wants to tell him about their life back home, right? Like she does, she chooses not to mention that RJ exists.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be a season finale thing too, with
For
the
sure.
mention of RJ.
I can see that.
I mean, then again, I thought they were going to hold this whole thing up season 1, the last episode of the reuniting both Rick and Michonne, which that totally just told me how much the pacing, they're going to go a little quicker with it, and then they're going to broaden out this whole thing, which they've done. I'll give kudos to the writers, and probably Andrew Lincoln and Dana Guerrero, who are heavily involved. They are single-handedly changing the pacing of The Walking Dead, because in the main show, in the Daryl series, and Fear and Dead City, and on and on and on, they went slow. They're going fast and immediate with this.
They are. And Tyler, I want to kick it off to you, because you kind of had briefly started to touch on that, where Michonne's journey changes, right? Where it seems like Rick's kind of end goal was, I'm going to find Michonne. Now he finds Michonne. So where do you think Michonne's journey is heading now that we have 4 more episodes of the two of them together than we had initially thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, again, I said last week, but I think it was really smart to have them reunite right away. And and you see now with what happens in the final scene of this episode, which we'll get to in a minute, but that we have set the table while answering a bunch of questions and giving people the payoff they want, and now we can tell this story in 4 episodes with all of that out of the way, and it's going to be good TV, I bet. I'm looking forward to it. But what's interesting to me is, like, for Rick, not that much has really changed, just except that Michonne is there. He's still trying to get away. He tells her they have to go back. You can see it's so brilliantly acted, because you can see the look on her face that's like, wait, what? And this just doubt and all of the fear like enters her mind when he's explaining this to her, but then she agrees to go because she's not going to give up on him.
Right.
But, and that holds while they're there. Like, she sees the might, you know, that moment where she climbs the ladder on top of the box or whatever, and sees the total might of what they have.
And I love the shot of, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting here. I love the shot that Michonne pulls out at the end of that tie-in. You know, it'd be cool if Michonne and Rick escape, if she like drops that nat lighter into either one of the bombs or an explosive to light the whole thing up. That would be so cool. But I like where this is going. One thing I thought was cool, and I'm going a little backwards to this. Well, it was a little cool, a little confusing, but I'll be real. Hayden kind of talked me through it and made me understand a little more. That purple, I think it was either, I don't know if it's a laser or gas.
It was a chemical
It's an
fire.
explosion.
It was a little confusing, and it sort of was a little messy, but Hayden explained it to me a lot more of how it makes a little more sense. If you would like to explain, because I don't know science more than you do, obviously.
It's just a controlled colored chemical fire. You're talking about in the scene where they have the walker's part, right? Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of fire imagery in this show, even before it came out, just in the posters and the marketing and trailers, and I think I think Michonne playing with the lighter is more metaphorical, right? I don't think it's that they're literally going to burn down and destroy the CRM. I think it's about changing and fundamentally reshaping the institution, right? Because it's like, I think Michonne and Rick, they're reunited, they're together, which we've wanted forever. But what we never expected, I don't think, was them to have such opposite feelings on such a major issue, right? Where Rick at this point is like, I have nothing to do with the CRM. These people don't matter to me. All that matters is my wife and getting back to my children. I have my wife. Let's go find my kids. And now it's like, I think Michonne isn't content to do that. Like, I don't think she can just leave the CRM and know that force is out there and is
that
treating
wiped
people
out
the way
these
it
good
is.
people. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I didn't get impacted as much by the fire scene because I thought it had been adequately explained away that Nat was just kind of a genius with this stuff, right? And so I just took it as that. So
We
yeah,
don't question that in this house. He knows what's up.
Yeah.
The one thing that bugged me was like it was very convenient that we had our like parting of the Red Seas moment right in front of Michonne where she wanted to go.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things that you just, I mean, it's an hour-long television show.
Right.
There's just going to be some stuff like that.
I always thought they were attracted by the sense of smell and not the sense of sight, but I guess maybe the chemicals were some sort of smell.
No,
we've
had many
sound and smell, right? I think are the big ones.
And sight. I'm doing a rewatch of the early seasons right now, and in the early even in season 1, it's like the fire has to be really low, so they don't attract walkers. And so it's that brightness as well and all that. So they build like the higher wall around the fire pit so they can have a higher fire going.
But it was a little sloppy, but like when you fully dive into it and you fully understand it and you fully like grasp, when you think it deeper, it makes much more sense. And if you're like a casual fan, that will probably make it a little more confusing. But if you're like a hardcore fan, like we three are, it will make so much more sense.
I actually kind of feel the opposite. I feel like casual fans are going to be like, okay, cool, and
they're not going to care or think about
it. Probably.
The hardcores like Unique right now that just want everything to totally make sense in that moment. Like, you're honestly the fans that get disappointed at times with stuff like this because like not everything's going to make sense. Like, it just isn't.
It's fiction. You can't overthink it.
I know.
We're learning more about the walkers as
we're learning more as we go on,
and
we're learning. That's the most important part. And
the migration thing is a relatively new idea.
Exactly,
to the mainstream, right? I think if I remember correctly, there was one of the Tales of the Walking Dead spinoff show. There's one episode that's set like really far in the future that follows a character who's filming like a nature documentary on walkers, and he notices kind of a migration pattern.
Yeah.
And this is coming back, in a big way, and kind of in more of a mainstream show, right? Obviously, much more mainstream than a one-off episode of that spinoff.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting to think about the rules of that, because it makes the world feel more real and lived in, and feel like it exists when the cameras aren't on, right? Because I've always kind of wondered, like, we've never really gotten a winter in the Walking Dead TV show at all.
We
got one episode of snow once.
I know. We kind of did with that one episode, but I wish that we had a whole like half a season of just winter, but that's too little, too late.
Yeah, and the comics address that a bit, and I think honestly, that's one of those things that just comes down to production constraints because it is a lot harder to film in the winter when it's freezing fucking cold outside, and you only have 8 to 10 hours of usable daylight sometimes, but it's cool to see that they're explaining kind of a way why the winter is a slower, safer period almost for people.
I always thought it made sense too, because Georgia's down south, and in Georgia they don't get as much snow as up north, so I didn't have as much of a problem with it in the earlier and the mid seasons. But...
because in real life, like 3 inches of snow will shut down Atlanta. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I've been to Atlanta for a few weeks, and like when. It didn't snow at that time, but I spoke to a few people in the Atlanta region. They told me, once there's like a few inches, they like shut things down. But
I think too, most of these shows are filmed in Georgia, or at least at parts, Yeah, and it's a huge like tax incentive to film there.
Yeah, that's why Breaking Bad decided to go to New Mexico to film because of the tax. Right. They were originally, if I remember correctly, I think they were going to do it in California. If I remember, I might be wrong there, but
which would have been probably so fucking expensive.
And they decided to go to New Mexico, and it all worked out in the end.
But now that they're moving the setting to more northern climates, with Dead City and now this moving
Yeah.
into like Philadelphia, the idea of migration becoming a bigger deal is really interesting.
It is.
And one thing I just want to call it real quick before we go to what you were going to say is, again, the helicopters, right? The helicopters are like the universal sign of evil in this show.
They are.
It is
in the
like
whole franchise since literally the pilot episode. Yeah.
The reflection
like,
first is the sign of evil, and then the helicopters become the evil.
It's like the X-Files, just anyone who smokes a cigarette is evil, right?
That's the bad guy.
And in this show, the helicopter's bad, right? And it's like when they're walking through that town right before the like chemical warfare attack, she hears the helicopter, right? And just immediately stops and just is looking around, not because it's like, hey, where are they going? Come back for us. It's like, oh shit,
and the way it's shot too, you see the reflection in the skyscraper, which is exactly like in the pilot episode. When Rick sees the very first
Michonne,
one in Atlanta.
I think Michonne sees it in either a small window or like a like one of those windows, which was a nice, neat detail because Rick did it season 1.
Right.
I think
very similar shot.
Yeah, there's a lot of Easter eggs in this episode.
There's a ton of this series.
A lot more than the first episode, and I just thought it was really well done. Like the Easter eggs they crammed into it, but
So stay tuned to the YouTube. So everyone listening, because I'm sure we'll do a whole video just on breaking that down.
I have to ask you guys one question. What did you guys think of the Jadis portion of the episode? We didn't mention that yet, but at the end, Jadis basically breaks into Rick's apartment. She had the key. She owns the place, of course. Yeah. And
she's his landlord.
She's his landlord. And she speaks to Rick and basically saying, "Oh, I know Michonne's basically in here. I know this. Anyone who knows that sword, like I do. And if you tell anybody about this, I will kill everybody in Alexandria, including the ones who love." Which basically references that.
Including people I really like, is what she says,
That basically references that, relationship she had with Gabriel, which was absolutely terrible. And I hated every single portion of it, but it's a nice, neat detail that they're throwing that out there. I know, I'm going to be nice. I never want to hear about it again. It was a nice detail that was thrown in there, but I thought this scene was brilliant to end it on a cliffhanger, which, a lot of cliffhangers they do, which is annoying. This was a well done one. But
agreed. It makes you want to see more without feeling unfulfilled. Tyler, what do you think of, because obviously we've had Major General Beale set up as the main big bad for this, but what do you think of Jadis as a direct antagonist to Rick and to Michonne specifically?
It's brilliant because, and once it happened, it hit me and I'm like, oh, this was just great, because they would have totally gotten away with it. Nobody knew who Michonne was. No one. But Jadis does. So now there's that threat, like, hovering over them. And you can see it on Rick's face, the oh shit, in that moment. And it's just so well done, because Beale's the threat of the CRM as a whole.
It's like the evil empire.
But Jadis is the threat to his family.
Yeah.
And that is just a really cool dynamic that we'll see play out over these 4 episodes.
And they brought back a lot of, I think, just her weird flirtatious energy that always creeps me out, made my skin crawl in season 7 and 8, because she's sitting there,
garbage people did made me
is creepy. But her specifically, like she when she lends them guns for all out war, she looks at Michonne at one point and like Nosrick is like, I lay with him after, and she's like, no you don't.
She sort of did the same thing too with the alcohol too.
Oh, I know. She got the glass of whiskey. He wanted to. Yeah, and the first words out of her mouth are like, "Long time no see. You look good." Like she's like, "Okay, Zaddy." Like Silver Fox moment over
one
here.
nitpick I have, and this is a small nitpick. I think Jadis looks ridiculous. I don't like what she's wearing. I don't like I don't like her haircut that well. I mean, kudos to her. Yeah. This was her choice. I just think she doesn't look that great.
She looks military though. She
does. Which is why it's a nitpick. She looks a hell of a lot better than I would in the military.
I don't know. I don't think it's. I'm not nitpicking it. I think it's fine. I think it works.
Yeah, I know it works. I'm just saying. I just feel like I don't know.
She looks like Romulans in Star Trek, which is exactly
Yeah.
why they look that way, because they're militaristic and
I feel
rigid.
it's too similar, though. Am I the only one who thinks that it's like too similar to it, or am I just?
There's
I think
very
that
limited window of what you can do stylistically within a military, right? And I think they were very deliberate about her costume. I think like all of the layers and the coats, and there's like an elegance to it where it's almost like Jadis is almost in like parade dress to me, where you see like the silver accents and all the zippers and everything. Like, to me, like, I think her character design is to make her stand out because like you have tiers of the CRM, right? You have consignees, you have people in the military, and then you have the people in the military who wear red, who like apparently are committing genocide.
Okay.
We learned this episode. And then Jadis is above that in kind of a leadership role where I think she's not getting her hands dirty anymore, but she's still capable of that, and she's doing evil in more of like a bureaucratic, political level way.
That makes a lot more sense. It's just that I can get with that.
She looks like a female Nazi officer. I think is kind of like the design aesthetic they're going for. It's true though. Like, I'm not saying that.
I know.
The design of her outfit is very like Hugo Boss 1938 Spring Winter collection.
Oh God, that's actually good. That's a good comparison. Okay.
So, one last thing I have before we get into wrapping this up is I really am hoping, and I'm looking for what you both think on this. I'm really hoping we see one specific connection in these next 4 episodes to one of the spinoffs, and that is how the methane is used for energy in Dead City.
Yes.
Yeah.
I need to see that connection.
I need to see that, and I want to see Silas in this, in The Ones Who Lived, because he was the one character that was super intriguing to me in Dead City, and
World Beyond, you mean?
I keep mixing this up. Sorry.
You're fine. There's like 6 of these shows at this point.
6 of these shows. I'm allowed to make an error, right? I'm a human. Yeah, I really want to see Silas in this as well. We'll see if that happens either later in this season or maybe season 2, which I think that's been confirmed. But overall, episode 2, I liked it. As for rating,
hold on. Before we go into like wrapping up and giving our ratings here, I just want to talk about the methane point real quick, Tyler, because I can tell you're trying to get somewhere with that, and I think it's interesting because it like shows where the consignees fit into the CRM, right? Where, because initially I would have thought that they were killing walkers with the intention of like making more land free and available for them to expand, right? And that's kind of the impression you got in World Beyond. Now it seems like we know they're not trying to move at all. They're very content with where they are, and they recognize that if they sprawl out any further, that gives them more of a chance to become seen and no longer be like the secret city on the top of the hill, right? So it's interesting where it's like the consignees they're killing walkers, but like if you think about that in the context of what they're actually doing with their end goal is like they're basically coal miners. Like they're doing very blue collar, undesirable but necessary work.
Yeah, it's sort of like the caste system that you mentioned earlier, where probably Jadis is up on the top with whatever deal she made, and then like the B's are down below, then the A's, then whatever Rick and Pearl is at, and then the General, what's his name? General, I keep forgetting his name. Beale. General Beale's probably above him. Then probably Jadis and whoever the inner circle that was interviewing Michonne was. We don't get to see them. It's more of a blurred shot, but
for sure.
I hope we get another character out of there. But time will tell on there. But
so let's get some final thoughts.
This cast system.
Yeah,
let's get some final thoughts. I'll give our score here at the end, but just give me final thoughts, Nick, first.
Yeah. As for the rating for my final thought, I'm going to give this an 8.5 out of 10. I loved a lot. The CGI was great. The visuals were great. The story was pretty great. The one knock I have to give was I didn't, except for Aiden and Bailey, who were the 2 weak links.
Couple,
So, besides that, Nick is 2 points on his own with how brilliant he was.
Right.
Overall, loved it. I love where I love where this is going, and yeah, so far so good. I love what I'm seeing. Great job.
Hayden, final thoughts?
Just another really exciting episode of The Walking Dead, right? I think we're moving at a faster pace than any of us could have expected. We're learning so much about Rick and Michonne, and that we're seeing their relationship evolve because it's not perfect, right? They're coming at certain things with completely different ways of viewing the world, which have been informed by the last 5-6 years of their life, which now we're more kind of caught up to and privy to what's going on there.
Mhm.
So I think we start episode 3 in a place where, like, I honestly thought like season 2 episode 1 would have started.
Mhm.
So it's, I think at this point, like, we've ripped off like the band-aid of like the expectations and the things that fans felt like they were entitled to see, and I'm just really excited to see what the story of these characters is and where it's going to end up. This is like definite appointment viewing television for me. I can't wait.
Yeah,
Once I know it's out.
yeah, I have that exact same feeling too.
For sure.
Would you say episode 3 is the most important episode, or would you like for this to keep going, or would you say, because I've noticed that a lot of people have mentioned from who I was watching this episode with, they're like, I think episode 3, and these are people who took a little bit of a longer break, like episode 3 is the
Mhm.
most important. Like first episode, fantastic, you know, you get the nostalgia.
Yeah.
Episode 2, the nostalgia wears off. Episode 3, it's like, okay, the nostalgia's down low. Let's
Mhm.
get into it. You think episode 3 would be that important one
I don't.
for those people?
Yeah.
Or?
I don't. I think those are people looking for reasons maybe to not like it. I don't know.
Probably.
Yeah.
They're the cynics. They're the cynics. I think episode 1 was the most important episode of the series, like hands down by a mile.
Yeah. And it is for any TV show, right? To just to get people in and get people invested. And I think the nice thing is when you're telling stories that your episodes are in multiples of 3, it gives you an opportunity to kind of stick to that 3-act structure really well,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's what we're seeing so far. Is this was very much rising action. We're setting the stage, and I feel like now the tensions are getting high, and we're gonna see like our most climactic action happen within the confines of the CRM.
Yeah, I agree. I just noticed that with the people I watched this episode with,
Mhm.
they had that sort of thought, like, oh, I like the nostalgia feeling. I agree with you. I think episode 1 was had to be picture perfect, and that was.
And it was.
I gave that a Ty Dillinger rating, and this one I gave an 8.5. So,
Right.
So I'll wrap us up here. So yeah, I'll wrap us up. For me, like the best thing about this right now is I genuinely don't have an idea of specifics on where we're going next. I know the overall, right, and the general movement there's going to be, but I don't know exactly specifics, which is cool. It's exciting. It gives me something to look forward to. And because I've read enough stories and watched enough stories, I'm kind of getting good at figuring out some of this stuff. So when I genuinely can't, that's good. I love that.
It is.
So yeah, it's. I think this episode was very, very strong. I think there was a time that if we were going to give a Walking Dead episode an 8.5, it would have been one of the high watermarks for that season.
True
and
that.
you know, the fact that we're giving this one an 8.5, and it's so far the second best episode out of 2. I mean, that says really good things about this series so far. So yeah, it's strong. It is really good. They're going to find a lot of good things. It just doesn't have quite as much as the first episode, but I don't expect any other episode this season to do that.
Maybe the finale.
Maybe the finale.
So yeah. But all in all, very good. And yeah, we'll wrap up here. Visit our website, strangeawesomegames.com, and remember, subscribe to the channel, like this video. It helps us out a ton, and you make sure that you get all of our Walking Dead content going forward. We appreciate your support as well. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and enjoy whatever Walking Dead you watch this week.